Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video.
Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people. Explore new skills, develop existing interests, and get lost in creativity. If you want to learn how to make an engaging story for social media, check out the class called Video for Instagram, Tell an Engaging Story in Less Than a Minute. It's taught by Halise Narvez, who is a digital storyteller. I love that she says filmmaking is a strong form of communication. You can learn the ins and outs of how to tell your story. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, meaning there are no ads and they're always launching new premium classes. Whether you're a dabbler, a pro, a hobbyist, or a master, you're creative. Discover what you can make with classes for every skill level. When you join, you can try one of Skillshare's live classes. Experience real-time inspiration as you connect with popular teachers while watching and working along with other members. Skillshare offers membership with meaning. Connect with the support of fellow creatives and enter a community of encouragement, communication, and inspiration.
The first 1,000 of our subscribers to click the link in the description box will get 1 month free trial of Skillshare so you can start exploring your creativity today.
We have owned our 42-acre homestead for nearly 6 years now. After getting our off-grid home finished, I wanted to build a small cabin on the back of our property. About a half mile from our home, I found the perfect place for the cabin. Most of our property is hillside, so finding level ground can be hard to do. But in this particular spot, every time I come up here, I see deer, elk, turkeys, even moose. And the maple trees are beautiful. So this is definitely the spot. I took the trunk of some cedar trees that came from off of our property as we cleared the land and used these cedar posts for the foundation to build on. The cabin is a 10 by 15 cabin, which is the perfect size cabin, and it's the perfect distance from our home as well. It will be an easy place to escape to when we might need a break. Obviously, the cabin is traditionally framed, 16 on center, and it shouldn't be too complicated. It will have a wood-burning stove for its source of heat, kerosene lamps and lanterns for light, a couple of beds for sleep, a desk to sit at, and a bookshelf for a select few books, and that's about it. On this part of our property, the trees have not been thinned like they've been thinned around our house. This is why I like it so much here. This is very much like what our land originally looked like when we first bought it. These maple trees can be a little bit aggressive, but they create a beautiful canopy to have the cabin underneath. In the process of looking for the right place to build our little cabin, I looked all around our property. There are parts of our property where I've never set foot. There are corner markers, but I've yet to find them. But this particular spot wasn't too far away from our home, yet far enough to create a little bit of solitude, right smack in the middle of nature. I managed to pick up most of my lumber before the price of lumber went too crazy. Of course, I will do the board and batten siding that I love so much. I've done it on the house, I've done it on the shop, and the end result always looks great. From start to finish took me over a year. I would work on it when I had time, but more often than not, I was working on other more pressing projects. When I had a minute, and when the weather would let me, I would try to get all the materials that I needed at least up to the cabin location. Then as the weather got worse, I at least had the materials there on site. I used the side-by-sides to get all the materials up to the cabin. For the most part, all of the materials came from either the local big box store or one of the nearby sawmills. Two of the windows were old windows that I repurposed. Some of the materials were left over from other big projects around our homestead. And over the last year, as building material prices continued to go up, I tried to reuse anything that I could around our place to keep costs down. From the cedar shakes to a couple of the old windows. The cedar shakes came off of a nearby roof after they tore them off to replace it with a metal roof, and I figured they would look perfect on the cabin. As I was picking up more materials for the shop and for some of the other projects that we have going, I would always pick up the materials that I needed for the cabin, not necessarily buying everything at once. I happened to get a deal on a whole bunch of tongue and groove pine that needed to be picked through, but again, it worked perfect up here at the cabin. Some of the tongue and groove was barely good enough for firewood, but most of it I was able to use somewhere around the cabin. When the price of OSB was over $80 a sheet, I decided this was a great opportunity to use some scrap left over from the shop build versus buying new. I put a second layer of the Huberwood OSB over the top of the 7/16 OSB just to stiffen the floor up a little bit, because the 7/16 OSB that I used on the floor was a little bit too light. I opted to use a fiberglass insulation to insulate the cabin simply because it was affordable and available when I needed it. These are the cedar shakes that I've been waiting to repurpose on the cabin. I thought I would use them on the front and the back, more or less as an accent, and to make the cabin look like it's been here for a minute. While I'm up here working at the cabin, it's one of my favorite places to hang out. You feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. The cedar shakes really gave it the look I was hoping it would. I picked up the rough sawn 2x12 by 16 foot boards to use on the board and batten on the shop, but again I also picked up what I needed to get the cabin finished. When the tongue and groove is made at the sawmills, there's oftentimes a grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3. The grade 3 typically goes to auction, and I'm guessing that the mill that I bought it from an auction. There was a lot of waste, but we can use that waste for firewood. When I bought the tongue and groove, I bought it right in the middle of the building materials crunch, and I paid more for it than I likely would have had I bought it a year earlier. But they had it, and I needed it. And I wanted to get the cabin finished up so we can use it. Using my Honda generator, my air compressor, and my trim nailer, the tongue and groove went up very fast. I can only haul so much materials up to the cabin at one time before it gets dangerous on the side-by-side. So as I would need it, I would haul it up there. I would then install it, and when I needed more, I would go back down to the house and get it, then haul it back up here again. I only had one close call where I nearly tipped the side-by-side over because it was so top heavy. The plan is to use the loft like the bedrooms. Have a couple of beds up there. Then we'll use the downstairs for anything else that we might need it for. When I'm not up here, I've got a squirrel that prefers to stay in the cabin. I'll have to keep an eye on him so he doesn't do too much damage. As I installed the tongue and groove, the cabin loft really started to take shape, and I definitely got excited to get it finished. As I was installing the tongue and groove, I figured out that because it was grade 3, I would rip off part of the tongue and groove, and I more or less turned it into a lap siding, but I was able to get it together and it looked right when it was done. After the door had been on the cabin for quite a while, the wood shrunk up, and I took the door back down to the shop, readjusted everything, and tightened it back up. making it just a little bit harder for that squirrel to get inside the cabin. Any and all scrap lumber that couldn't be used on the cabin will end up being used as firewood down at our house or up here. In my opinion, the board and batten is a timeless look. I've talked about it before in other videos, but typically board and batten is a green cut wood that historically was often used when people couldn't afford anything else. As the wood dries, the batten strips would hopefully keep the wind out. There's many old barns in our neck of the woods that were built with green cut lumber in the board and batten style. As I was working on the cabin, I would occasionally grab my wife and or kids and bring them up here to the cabin just to show them what it's turning into. As I'm nearing the finish line with the cabin, it's obvious that the kids are excited to use it. I had been on the hunt for a very particular type of wood stove. I knew that whatever wood stove I would use in the cabin had to be capable of heating the cabin, but I would also cook on that wood stove.
This is so cool.
What do you think?
This is so cool.
We'll put some foam pads up there with some sleeping bags and we're good to go.
Okay.
I ended up finding this small wood stove that was perfect for the cabin. And like I said, I could very easily cook on this little stove as well. Rather than putting a penetration through the roof, I decided to go out the back of the cabin. Then I brought the chimney pipe up against the back of the cabin, then securing the chimney pipe to the eaves. once we get some heavy snow, that little wood stove is going to be very important to stay comfortable up here. There's still a few things I'd like to get done around the cabin, mainly getting the inside set up. I'm actively building a desk and a bookshelf that will be used here in the cabin, but other than that, it's good to go. While it took me more time than I anticipated, it really didn't cost that much to build it, and we're really looking forward to using it as a family. Cedar and I have been working on the inside of our little cabin up here, getting everything finished up and tidy so it can be used. And it's turned out really cool. So hopefully in the next week or two, we will show you a video of the end result as far as basically how we laid it out in the inside.